So I've just recently returned from an annual convention of Fancy Guppies UK, and guys, it was an absolute blast. I was there for two main reasons. First was, how can I improve the strains that I'm currently working with? And the second one was to answer maybe the most commonly asked question on this channel, and that is, how are judges actually distinguishing the quality of Fancy Guppies? And I really am super happy that Bill Galbally, the judge that's well known around the whole world for judging Fancy Guppies, has agreed to talk us through some of the fish that we've seen on the show. So without any further ado, let's check it out.
So I'm Bill Galbally. I'm the chairman of Fancy Guppies Association. So that's the national club in the UK for Fancy Guppies, although we also cater for other guppies such as endless. And this is our exhibition we're at the moment, which is in Warwick, which is in the centre of the country. And we have several fish on display, which I can talk you through. Here we have a pair of Roundtails. Unfortunately the male's asleep on the bottom. This was the best in show pair, and what we're looking for in a Roundtail is the size is smaller than the Broadtails. It's the maximum size is 24 millimeters. So the length of the fish, apart from the caudal fin, has to be 24 millimeters. This one is pretty much spot on, perhaps a millimetre short. We're also looking for good colour throughout the body and throughout the fins. And this fish has colour covering almost 100% of the fish, which is why it's scored highly. And in a Roundtail, obviously, you're looking for the shape of the tail, which has to be as round as possible, and this one has quite a good shape to the tail. And the dorsal fin has to be in the form of a flag shape, but not extending beyond the caudal fin, and this one meets that, which is why, again, it's won the show. The female is scored differently. She's scored on more form than shape, and is she a good match for the male? And the size has to be 2/3. The male is 1/3 of the size of the female, and that, if you look, is about exactly right in these fish. So a good pair together. Okay, moving on to the Delta tails. So this is a full red delta. So this is an albino fish. If you're looking at the male, there's an excellent shape, a delta or triangle tail shape to his caudal fin, and he's got quite a straight back edge to it, so this is why it scores high. And the fin edges are parallel, which is another thing that we're looking for to score high points. The dorsal fin has to extend 1/3 into the caudal, which is quite different from a Roundtail, and this one, if you look, does, and it has to have a nice smooth shape to the fin with no serrations or other blemishes, and the colour is a fairly even colour. It's not that dark. The colour could be more intense, but since it's an albino fish, it's difficult to get that intense colour. But the colour is spread throughout the body of the fish, and also it's an even colour throughout the finnage, which is another thing that we're looking for. So these are single male fish, so we don't exhibit trios at our show. We do that when we're exhibiting in Europe, but for our individual shows that we take around the country in Britain, we just exhibit a single male fish, and these are the single males, and I'll talk you through this particular one, which is a Moscow blue. So what we're looking for in a Moscow blue is good colour throughout the fish, and this one has colour, I would say 100% throughout that fish. You've got colour, and it's a good, strong, deep blue colour. The tail, again, is a triangle tail. It's not as good as the one we saw earlier, because although the angle is straight, when you come to the edge of the tail where it meets the back edge, there's a rounding to it, so therefore it would have lost points because of that, and the back edge isn't as straight as the previous one. Again, it's got a slight rounding to it, and what we're looking for is a square cut, so it would lose points for that. However, the colour in the finnage is superb. It's strong colour and it's throughout, and that's for the caudal and the dorsal. And the dorsal fin of this fish is quite spectacular because there's no serrations or cuts in it, and the colour, again, I must emphasise, is almost perfect. So this fish would score very highly on colour. It would score quite highly on the shape of the actual body, but less so on the shape of the caudal fin, but the dorsal fin would score high. So this bluegrass was kindly exhibited from Denmark. So the fish isn't swimming so well as these other fish, so when it comes to marking vitality, it would probably lose a point for that, only the one, but it's not swimming around the tank as the others, so that's the score in vitality. It's out of 5. This would probably score 4 out of 5 because there's nothing else wrong with the fish, and as you can see, when it wants to, it can move quite freely. The colours in this fish, they're quite good. The colour on the body, it's got a fully marked body with the bluegrass pattern. If you look at the colours in the fins, the colour is quite strong, and the evenness of the speckling, which is meant to look like grass seed, is there. So for colour, this fish would score high. It is smaller than the requirement for a broadtail, so it would score, it would have a couple of points deducted because it's not as big as it could be. And the fin, the delta shape is good, but the back edge again is slightly rounded and there are some serrations, so it would lose points for that. The dorsal fin is coming almost exactly 1/3 into the caudal, so it would score a perfect mark for that. But the dorsal fin, the shape of it at the trailing edge is serrated, and there is a split. Unfortunately, these things can happen when fish are travelling, and since it's come a long way, that's a likelihood, but it would lose marks for that.
Of course.
So this is the winner of the double sword, and swordtails have to be the same size as broadtails. So what we're looking for here is an evenly matched tail, shape-wise. You don't have to match in colour, although some judges like to. The actual rules state that as long as it's good colour, it doesn't have to match. So the top doesn't have to match the bottom sword of the extensions, and the dorsal does not have to match. Many judges look for matching, but that's incorrect. Okay, so here we have not matching swords. The bottom one's blue and the top one is red. However, the colour is quite prominent and bright, so I would score this fish highly for colour, because it doesn't have to match, but the colour is good. The shape of the fins are good as well. There's no serrations, and they are coming to a very sharp point, which is what we look for in Europe. They don't look for that in America, but we do in Europe. And also they are very even, so the top is very similar to the bottom sword, so that's why it's scored so high, which is why it's won. The dorsal fin also has good colour and it's got good shape. The shape of the dorsal fin in a swordtail is quite different from a delta tail in that it has to come up and then finish in a point rather than in the flag shape, which is a more rounded shape of the delta. So this fish, the colour in the body is also spread throughout the fish, and it's got a nice pattern and strong colours, so body colour is very good. It's not quite as good as the blue one that we saw earlier, the Delta, because that was very strong everywhere. So this won't score quite so many points, but it's still good colour, certainly for a swordtail, and there's a good pattern. But the shape of this fish is probably the best shape that we've seen out of all of them. This is what a guppy should look like shape-wise. So it's got enough of a body to make it full without it being too fat, for a better word. So it hasn't been overfed on protein. It's been brought up correctly to have that correct shape. And there's no aberrations, there's no bends, or there's no lumps. It's just a naturally properly shaped fish, which is quite lively, so it would score well on vitality as well.
So I hope that this video helped you a little bit on what should you look for in case that you want to show your guppies. And this video may also help you a lot if you want to go and purchase some of them. And if you guys are thinking after watching this video about joining some club, here are a few words from Bill Galbally and Rose Galbally on how you can actually do that.
If you're around in the UK and watching this, come and join us with Fancy Guppies UK. You can find us on our Facebook page for more details. We want to encourage people into the hobby, especially young people, and this is a good way to actually gain fish. You can get them at an auction, and it's also a good way to meet other people by coming to a show. If you're viewing from Denmark, then I would strongly encourage you to join clubs in Denmark. I know that there's a new club being set up, possibly, and there are other clubs in Scandinavia that you might want to join, but please join a club, because that way the hobby can be sustainable, and in fact, let's grow it.
So every year we host a convention, so we have guest speakers, an auction and a Fancy Guppies show. And to find out more information, please go to www.fancyguppies.co.uk and find us on Facebook and Twitter with Fancy Guppies UK. Thank you.
All the links mentioned are gonna be in the description below, so you guys can just go check it out, and hopefully I'm gonna see you in that next video and also on one of the upcoming shows.